Pressure on Singapore to abolish capital punishment got rekindled after a 46-year-old man, Tangaraju Suppiah, was hanged on April 26 after being convicted in 2018 for conspiring to smuggle 1 kilogram of cannabis into Singapore. Pleas by his family members and rights group to put hold on the punishment fell on deaf ears.
என் தம்பி பற்றி சொல்ல நிறையா இருக்குது. ஸோ அவன் சின்ன வயசுலேருந்து அவன் எல்லாருக்கிட்டையும் ரொம்ப அன்பாக இருக்கிறாங்க. ஸோ அவனை பற்றி தப்பாக சொல்கிறதுக்கு எதுவும் இல்லை. ஸோ இந்த குடும்பத்துக்காகவே அவன் ரொம்ப கஷ்டப்பட்டான். ஸோ அக்கான்னு சொல்லி எனக்கே அவன் ரொம்ப கஷ்டப்பட்டான். தம்பி எந்த ஒரு தப்பும் செய்யலைன்னு எனக்கு தெரியுது. ஸோ இந்த கேஸை திருப்பி தொடர்ந்து பார்த்தா ரொம்ப நல்லதாக இருக்கும்.
His sister Lilavathy was one of the family members who was vocal in her appeal to withhold the hanging. She was supported by many rights groups, which believed that the move was absolutely unacceptable and Singapore was completely out of step with the international community.
Singapore's execution of Tangaraju is absolutely unacceptable. They're trying to say that they're about deterrence, but really what they are is violating international human rights law. By executing this individual for the alleged trafficking of a kilo of cannabis, it shows that Singapore is completely out of step with the international community.
Tangaraju was convicted in 2017 of abetting by engaging in a conspiracy to traffic 1,017.9 grams of cannabis, which was twice the minimum volume required for a death sentence in Singapore. He was sentenced to death in 2018, and the Court of Appeal upheld the decision. Rights groups have alleged that the punishment does not match the crime committed, with some alleging that fair representation was denied to Tangaraju.
People like this person who had a limited amount of ability in English, who was not afforded a translator when he was being interrogated by the police, was not allowed to have a lawyer present when he was being interrogated by the police, and he never actually even touched the marijuana that he's alleged to have trafficked. So, the case looks very suspicious from just an evidentiary point of view. And for now that case to then result in the ultimate penalty, an irreversible outcome, the death penalty, again shows just the civilized modern Singapore is a mirage.
In many parts of the world, including neighbouring Thailand, cannabis has been decriminalized, with authorities abandoning prison sentences. But rights groups have been heaping pressure on Singapore to abolish capital punishment. The United Nations says the death penalty has not proven to be an effective deterrent globally and is incompatible with international human rights law, which only permits capital punishment for the most serious crimes.
As the international community has responded to the undeniable evidence and science about cannabis and harm reduction, moving decisively towards decriminalization, legalization, and regulation of the plant and its uses, it should outrage all Singaporeans to witness the grave injustices that Tangaraju and his family have suffered over the last 27 years. In addition to Tangaraju, there are at least 5 other men on death row at Changi Prison for cannabis-related charges.
Despite protests from rights groups within Singapore and abroad, the Home Affairs Ministry maintained its stand that Tangaraju's guilt had been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. There was no retrial or review of the sentence handed down to him. The Asian financial hub has some of the world's toughest anti-narcotics laws and insists the death penalty remains an effective deterrent against trafficking.
There's a larger move in the world towards abolition of the death penalty. Singapore's going the other way. There's a larger move in the world towards cannabis legalization. Singapore's going the other way. And it's going to cause problems for Singapore. People are going to say, well, I don't want to go to Singapore.
The United Nations says the death penalty has not proven to be an effective deterrent globally and is incompatible with international human rights law, which only permits capital punishment for the most serious crimes.
There are many people around the world who now basically believe that cannabis should be legalized. Poll after poll in North America, in Europe, show that people don't consider cannabis to be a dangerous drug. And so, people are going to think twice about whether they want to be a tourist in Singapore, whether they want to go to Singapore, whether they want to attend a business conference in Singapore.
Tangaraju's execution was the first in 6 months and 12th since last year in the city-state. Singapore resumed executions in March 2022 after a hiatus of more than 2 years. Among those hanged was Nagenthan K. Dharmalingam, whose execution sparked a global outcry, including from the United Nations and activists worldwide, because he was deemed to have a mental disability. But Singapore remains adamant